Time walk with me.
Hey everybody, welcome back again to Brick Building Fun. Today we're going to take a look at my Zaxara the Exemplary deck. Zaxara the Exemplary. This is a Nightmare Hydra legendary, obviously. 2/3 with Death Touch, costs 4 mana to cast. It is, I don't know what this combination of colors is called, but it is black, green, and blue. Has Death Touch, taps for 2 mana of any color, and its best ability is whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra creature token, then put X +1/+1 counters on it. So you can assume there are a lot of X spells in this deck. And I designed this deck with basically tapping out at the end of your, during your turn in mind. So here we go. Card number 1, Astral Cornucopia, costs XXX. So whenever you tap out to cast this, you'll only get 1/3 of the mana that you can ultimately produce, but it is an investment because if you cast this for 3, it comes into play with 1 charge counter, and you can tap it for 1. But if you cast it for 6, it taps for 2. Cast it for 9, it taps for 3. It gets a little steep, but if you have ways of putting more charge counters on it, then you got something good. But I don't think I do in this deck, because this is just 1 card in the 99, so how likely am I to... I think it's the only charge counter artifact in this deck, so I didn't really do that. But maybe I still should. We got Stonecoil Serpent, of course. It costs X, and it has Reach, Trample, Protection from Multicolored, and it comes into play with X +1/+1 counters. This one is just kind of a no-brainer card to add to this deck. All these X cards in this category will be Howl from Beyond. Target creature gets +X +0 until end of turn. We got Attempted Murder from the new Joke set. Forget what it's called, but whatever. Unfinity, that's what it's called. I do remember what it's called. And it says, choose target creature, roll X 6-sided dice. For each even result, put 2 -1/-1 counters on that creature. For each odd result, create a 1/2 blue bird creature token with flying named Stormcrow. So you'll get a bunch of Stormcrows, and you might kill a creature of your opponent's. Or of yours. You probably want to do it to your opponent, though. March of Wretched Sorrow. This is an instant, X and a black. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may exile any number of black cards from your hand. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. And it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life. Profane Command. Choose 2, target player loses X life, return target creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, and up to X, target creatures gain fear until end of turn. So those are all very nice abilities, plus with Zaxara out, it gives you an XX creature. Battle at the Bridge. X and a black, improvise, so you can tap your artifacts to help pay for it. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, you gain X life. So it's a bit like March of Wretched Sorrow. Mind Twist. This particular specimen is from 4th edition, I believe. Target player discards X cards at random from their hand. If that player does not have enough cards, their entire hand is discarded. So you can pay whatever you want in X. You can pay 50, and even if they have only 7 cards in their hand, that's fine, you still get a 50/50 creature. Ingenious Mastery. X, 2 of any and a blue. You may pay 2 of any and a blue rather than pay the spell's mana cost, but you're not going to do that because Zaxara is going to give you a creature for the X. If the 2 and a blue cost was paid, you draw 3 cards, and an opponent creates 2 treasure tokens, and they scry 2. If that cost wasn't paid, you just draw X cards. So, it's a good card draw. Well, I don't know if it's a good card draw spell, but it works in this deck. Thassa's Intervention, X and 2 blue. choose one. Look at the top X cards of your library, put 2 in your hand and the rest on bottom of your library in random order. Or counter target spell unless its controller pays twice X. So that's pretty cool. Fascination. Choose one. Each player draws X cards, or each player mills X cards. Next we have Even the Score. This spell costs 3 blue less to cast if an opponent has drawn 4 or more cards this turn, and it costs 3 blue and X. Draw X cards. Fractal Summoning. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X +1/+1 counters on it, and Zaxara means you'll make 2. Benevolent Hydra. X and 2 green. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. If one or more +1/+1 counters were put on another creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. +1/+1/+1. Very funny. Tap, remove a +1/+1 counter from Benevolent Hydra. Put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. So you can move around +1/+1 counters. And we got Hooded Hydra. Enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Of course, X and 2 green. And when it dies, create a 1/1 green snake for each +1/+1 counter on it. And it's got Morph. And when it's turned face up, put 5 +1/+1 counters on it. But you're going to probably want to pay the X. Here we got Ren's Run Hydra. Just a simple X and a green. Comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. But it also has Reinforce. Now, if you use that Reinforce ability, you are not casting a spell, so Zaxara's ability won't work for it. So you're probably going to want to do that. But who knows? Who knows where your game might take you. Primordial Hydra. Comes into play with X +1/+1 counters, usual Hydra shenanigans. And at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on Primordial Hydra. So this can get real big, real fast. And it has Trample as long as it has 10 or more +1/+1 counters on it. So that makes it even scarier. Capri Copian. It's a Goat Hydra that costs X and a green. And let's see, the usual Hydra ability. And put a +1/+1 counter, 2 of any, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then you may reselect which player Capricorpium is attacking. Only the player Capricorpian is attacking may activate this ability, and only during their declare attacker's step. So people can just keep on bouncing this among them until only the poorest player is attacked. Windstorm. X and a green, X damage to each creature with flying. This deck doesn't have a whole lot of flying, so flying hosing is good. Contortion's Troop. Enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, so it is a human that kind of acts like Hydra. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, which you most likely will, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Ivy Elemental. This is just a very simple Hydra-style creature. Comes into play with X +1/+1 counters, costs X and a green. Primal Might. Target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, then it fights up to one target creature you don't control. So this is kind of a creature destruction spell. Spinning Wheel Kick. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So you can kind of wipe the board with that, potentially. Hungering Hydra. Comes into play with X +1/+1 counters. Can't be blocked by more than one creature, so only one creature can block it. And whenever it's dealt damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it, and then helpfully, they have it written down here, it must survive the damage to get the counters. So, it's not invincible, but it's not very invincible. Alright, I just realized that I have a duplicate card in this deck, so I'm going to have to figure out another card to put in here in its place. Anyway, let's continue. Genesis Hydra. When you cast this spell, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest into your library, and it comes into play with X +1/+1 counters, so it's got a cool little ability there. You wouldn't use that ability to put anything with X in its mana cost, because that would make X 0, but there's plenty of other stuff in this deck. Wildwood Scourge enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on another non-Hydra creature you control, put a +1/+1 counter on Wildwood Scourge. So, yeah, that won't help you with the Hydra tokens you get from him or any of the Hydra creatures, but there are other things. There's that human in here, and there's other stuff. Vastwood Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1. Blah, 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 blah. When Vastwood Hydra dies, you may distribute a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on Vastwood Hydra among any number of creatures you control. So when it dies, you can put its +1/+1 counters on other creatures. Stream of Life. Target player gains X life. Only a useful card in this deck, unless you're real desperate for life. And not for mana. Alright, here is the next category. Whoops, okay, that's lands. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go into the lands then. But we don't need to tell you about the basics. Okay, as far as the basics go, of course, it's going to have forests, islands, and swamps. And here are the non-basics. We got Haunted Mire. We got Witherbloom Campus. Quandrix Campus. Tangled Islet. Or Islet. Probably Islet, I don't know. Opulent Palace, of course. Contaminated Aquifer. Command Tower, obviously. Rupture Spire, Mistvault Bridge, and Tron. Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant. So, in the unlikely event that I have all these out at once, I'll get some nice bonus mana for casting my X spells. Alright, here we have Instill Energy. This lets you tap a creature twice during your turn. So that's nice for Zaxara and for other cards in this deck, as you will see. Kelpie Guide. 2/2. Tap it to untap another target permanent you control. Or you can tap it to tap a permanent if you have 8 or more lands. But it's mostly in here for the untap ability to get more mana out of Zaxara or other creatures in this deck, as you will see. Clever Conjurer, tap to untap a permanent. Hydra's Growth. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on enchanted creatures. So that can get out of hand very quickly, just like with the other card that does the same thing. Soul's Might. Put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is that creature's power. Good for doubling the power and toughness of a Hydra. Thunderous Snapper. 4/4. Whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, draw a card. And when you cast a spell with X, if you end up paying more than 5, that counts for this. Colossal Sky Turtle is a 6/5 enchantment creature with flying and ward 2, but it's mostly here for the channel abilities. You can pay 2 of any green and discard it from your hand to return any card from your graveyard to your hand, or pay 1 of any in a blue and discard it, return a creature to its owner's hand. If you have a small creature and you decided you want it bigger, you can return it and recast it. Or whatever. Zamek Guildmage. This one, let's see, a blue and a green. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. That's good, except you're tapping 2 mana to do that, so you're probably not going to do that too much. This is in here for this bottom ability. Green and a blue, remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control, draw a card. You're going to have creatures with +1/+1 counters on them, so good for extra card draw. Retribution of the Ancients, a black enchantment. 1 black, remove X +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. You're going to end up having very beefy creatures, so this will help you to keep control of your opponent's board a bit. Keep anything from becoming a threat, or remaining a threat. Here we have Cultivate. Of course, it's a green deck, so it's going to have green stuff. Lots of ramp. Elvish Aberration taps for 3 green, and it's a 4/5. So even once you have 6 mana, it's going to be good to have all this extra mana because you're going to want as much as possible to pay all those X's. Sylvan Scrying. Search your library for a land, any land, like one of the Urzatron cards. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Urban Evolution. Draw 3 cards. You can play an additional land this turn. A good chance that one of those 3 cards you draw will be a land. Mindstone. Yeah, you know what Mindstone does. Upwelling. This one's a cool one. Mana pools don't empty at the end of phases or turns. Now this applies to you and your opponent, and it says this effect stops mana burn, but there isn't mana burn anyway. But that's cool. This allows you, say at the end of your opponent's turn, if you have lands untapped for whatever reason, you can sort of double up on your X spells. Cradle Clearcutter. This is a 3/6 with Prototype. You can cast it as a 1/3 for 3 mana, or you can pay 6 and make it a 3/6, and it taps for 3 mana, or however much its power is. So you could end up actually beefing him up, giving him +1/+1 counters, and tap him for a lot more. Dark Ritual. Explains itself, really. Bushwhack. Choose 1. Search your library for a basic land, so you can't get an Urza's land, unfortunately. Or target creature you control fights a creature you don't control. So you do that on that creature that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever it's dealt damage, or for however much damage it's dealt, and you can get him beefed up even more. Hedron Archive. Tap it for 2 colorless, or you can draw 2 cards with it. Llanowar Dead. Taps for a black. I think maybe I should put a Birds of Paradise in here. I probably should. Canopy Tactician. Other elves you control get +1/+1. Who cares? Taps for 3 green. I'm not good at saying colors, am I? Glorious Sunrise. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, you can choose 1. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. That could be really good if you have a lot of big hydras. Or target land gains tap for 3 green until end of turn. That's very good because it helps you cast those X spells bigger. Draw a card if you control a creature with power 3 or greater. You will. Or you gain 3 life. Yeah, you might need to. Expedition Map. Here's another card that helps you to draw one of the Urza's lands. Coveted Jewel. This one, I really like this card, but I realize it could easily be used against me, so if you're going to use this in a deck, make sure it's a very aggressive deck. And green and black are very aggressive colors, so. Krosan Restore. Tap to untap target land. If you use that on the land that has been Glorious Sunrised, then you can end up with a lot of mana. And it's got Threshold. Untap up to 3 target lands. Activate only if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard. So that might be worth loading up your graveyard a little bit, if you can somehow. Elementalist's Palette. This is a really cool card. Whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, put 2 charge counters on Elementalist's Palette. Tap for mana of any color, or tap for a colorless for each charge counter on Elementalist's Palette. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X, not just spells, but any cost. So that's really good for this deck. And it's like this card was tailor-made for this commander. It's so good here. Ice Cauldron. This allows you to put spells on layaway. So you pay part or none of a spell's casting cost. You put that spell on here, and then later on you can tap this to get that mana to put that mana toward casting the spell that you put on here. So it also protects your card from discard because it puts it into exile. Ice Cauldron is really cool, really handy. We got Marleaf Pixie. Taps it for a blue or a green. So that is that. And then we have some removal cards here. We've got Deep Freeze. I think this is very effective removal because, okay, it's an enchant creature. The enchanted creature has base power and toughness 0/4 and has Defender, loses all other abilities, and it's a blue wall in addition to its other colors and types. So you put this on your opponent's, say, Zaxara, the Exemplary, and it's better than destroying it because the creature's still out there. They can't recast it, but it's useless. Isn't that cool? Ichthyomorphous, same basic, same idea. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue fish with base power and toughness 0/1. Now that makes it very weak. They could just block with it if with that creature if you attack them. But if your creatures have trample, they're going to get through. Frogify. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a 1/1 frog. One with the stars. This turns a permanent. It turns a creature or an enchantment into an enchantment. Then makes it lose all other card types. Broken Wings. Destroy target creature, target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Crowsand Grip. This one's a pretty well-known card. Split Second. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. And we got Shoot Down. Exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. So with this, we've got the ability to destroy a pretty wide variety of things if we ever need to while we are building our army of giant hydras. So that is my Zaxara, the Exemplary deck. What do you think? Tell me what you think. I'll see you next time.